day it's turning out to be. Not only is India grappling with the tragic events of terrible Thursday, but there's also a war looming on the horizon. But more on that in the second half of the show. As I said, viewers, the events of terrible Thursday, India, after recoiling with shock, has begun to pick up the pieces, literally. Investigators are combing the crash site, sifting for material evidence that might offer clues to the only question that matters. How did it happen? Fortunately, the craft's black box has been recovered, and this breakthrough of sorts will help provide vital insights. The black box, which will be decoded abroad on neutral ground, is perhaps the most vital bit of engineering, as it's a record of not just how each and every part of the plane behaved before it crashed, but also records the conversations that have taken place in the cockpit between the pilots and ATC, if there was anything beyond Mayday. It is like having a digital fly on the wall. Viewers, the black box, the components, it has several components. You can see it on your screens. It is, as I said, a device that tracks speed, altitude, engine health. It's the cockpit voice recorder, records conversation inside the cockpit, as I told you, and there are many more things. It's packaged in this bright orange jacket, which is easy, very easy to detect, and it is designed to survive extreme conditions, extreme heat, so it would have definitely survived that big blaze. Now, 24 hours or 25 hours of detailed flight data is recorded via the black box, and after the crash, investigators use the information to recreate the sequence of events. Once recovered, black boxes are sent to high-tech labs, and if damaged memory parts may have to be repaired. But that's not quite the case here, at least that's not what we are being told. Apart from the black box, the video of the ill-fated plane taking off, and you can see that in the middle of your screens, there it takes off that flight and then sort of plummets to the floor, is being looked at with great interest, this video, because the most obvious thing it reveals is that the landing gear of the plane had not been redacted, and shows that the plane was in a strange position with its nose abnormally raised above the rest of the level of the fuselage, and you can see that very clearly. In fact, there's a clearer visual of the plane taking off on the runway and then assuming about 600 feet height, and you can see that the nose of the plane is awkwardly positioned. Those who know also are focusing on the fact that the plane's wings haven't curved on themselves adequately, suggesting that there was a loss of lift. And all of this, viewers, is pointing to certain theories. There's the loss of lift theory, as I say. Experts say the possible loss of power during the aircraft's takeoff. The landing gear is down, which is an anomaly. Experts say possibly because of mechanical or hydraulic failures. So the first two are directly related to defects in the aircraft. There's the bird hit theory, but because there have been no flames or sparks seen from engines, if it's hit by a bird, this is being discounted. There's a dual engine failure theory. Experts say fuel contamination could have caused the engine to seize up. So there are these theories that are doing the rounds, but we won't, of course, know what is the real reason till we have the report. But one pilot's assessment has gone viral across social media. Listen in.
I think the pilot flying said to the co-pilot, gear up at the appropriate time. I think the co-pilot grabbed the flap handle and raised the flaps instead of the gear. If that happened, and this is a big if that happened, this explains a lot of why this airplane stopped flying, why the lift over the wings died. Because at that point now, the flaps are retracting, all that extra lift you're producing in the wings goes away. You're already slow, you already got the power pushed up all the way. This airplane's as heavy as it's ever going to be in this flight, and you still got those great big landing gear out there producing all sorts of drag. This is a bad combination at this point. You see the nose now start to come over. Now, why would the nose come over? Because the airplane is trying to create as much lift as it can over those wings. And if the flaps are coming up, it's going to nose over to get even more airflow over those wings. That's going to be a very, very uncomfortable feeling for the pilot at the controls. Why? Because he's losing airspeed and he's going to begin to lose altitude now. Remember, he thinks the gear has come up. He might not know that the flaps came up. He just sees a motion over next to him, and he's looking outside going, wait, what's going on? It's all very confusing, and it all happens in a split second. Let's watch. The airplane starts to settle in. It starts to now descend. You see the pilot start to pull the nose up a little bit more, okay? As he's getting closer to the ground, he's probably got the power pushed up all he can. And now I think he's going to get into a power on stall. Not enough lift is being produced by those wings. All that drag is being produced by the landing gear that's still out there. Could anything have saved the day at this point? Maybe if they'd raised the gear. Maybe if they'd raised the gear and put the flaps back out. But it's very unlikely that once this gets to this point that they can recover from it. And now watch what happens. The airplane begins to kind of wallow, right? The pilot pulls back even more on the nose. That aggravates the whole thing. And now you get this waddle into the ground, and it's in a controlled power on stall until it impacts the ground.
Well, which of these theories may or may not be borne out by the forensic digital evidence that will be extracted from the black box is not known, but there has been a loss of confidence in Air India. The airline CEO, Campbell, has met with Prime Minister Modi to give him a situation assessment, but the fact is that many experts are remarking that the airline has been guilty of taking a lax view of passenger safety. There have been a series of incidents flagged by DGCA that raise serious questions about the work culture of the airline. One of them is that AI or Air India is taking passengers for granted by cutting corners that could risk lives. What do I mean? Let me flesh this out. This is what DGCA has done. It has fined Air India in January 2025 30 lakhs for allowing a pilot to fly without completing mandatory takeoffs and landing exercise. Can you believe it, viewers? March 2024, 80 lakhs fine for breaching pilot flight's duty limit. 30 lakh fine for inadequate Cat 3 pilot rostering during fog. Total of 3 pilots in 2 separate incidents suspended for allowing unauthorized entry in cockpit. So these are DGCA reports of fines imposed on Air India. It is shocking that the DGCA resolved these very serious transgressions on the part of the airline with minor fines. It's a different matter that the airline is playing with lives, but then your response is 30 lakhs. Now, imagine, viewers, these jets at the very least would have at least 130 passengers on board at different times. And you're going to give 30 lakhs as a fine? Are you suggesting that the price of life is so cheap in this country, viewers? The DGCA needs to pull up its socks. If you do the maths, it is almost as if the DGCA too doesn't think the life of a passenger is worth much. Aside from these penalties, the airline hasn't provided adequate explanation for a series of tech-related failures, and there have been many. September 2024, Boeing 737-88 AI Express suffered engine problems after takeoff from Delhi. There was an incident on October 2024, again, where an Air India Express Boeing plane declared an emergency immediately after takeoff due to a hydraulic issue in Tamil Nadu. In December 2024, there was another issue. And it's on your screens. I mean, it took off from a taxiway instead of the runway at Goa, viewers. December 2024, Boeing 737-86N Air India Express returned to land at Kochi after tire debris was found on the runway. Clearly, something had gone wrong during liftoff. And then in January 2025, this year, an Airbus of Air India suffered an engine shutdown after departing Bangalore. So all of this, viewers, is well documented. There is also, of course, the evidence to suggest that 787s have been globally facing some challenges. Many feel that these mechanical problems can be traced back to some basic structural problems with the Dreamliner itself. Last year, a whistleblower had testified with evidence before a US Parliamentary Oversight Committee to some potentially catastrophic flaws. The Boeing engineer, Salepour, urged the maker to ground every 787 Dreamliner, flagging risk of premature failure. And he listed reasons, shortcuts that were being taken in securing certain requirements, gaps. There were in separately manufactured fuselage sections which were faulty, reducing durability, raising the risk of catastrophic failure. All of this, viewers, has been flagged. And I want to open this up because this is a very serious issue. I'm not saying that any of these problems, viewers, that have been enumerated by me, that have afflicted Air India, were responsible for this particular instance. But what it points to is a culture. And there is a loss. If you speak to people, they will tell you there's a loss of confidence right now amongst consumers. And they do fear about their safety. And this is an industry that runs on trust. Vijay Rao, former cabin crew of Air India, is here with us. M.R. Sivaraman, former DGCA official. Captain Amit Singh, founder, Safety Matters Foundation. And Anand Ranganathan, Dr. Ranganathan is there for us to give us a bit of a citizen's perspective on this. But let me first bring in Captain Amit Singh, founder, Safety Matters Foundation. Today, the DGCA, sir, and I read your piece. I think you're the same person who's written the piece in the Times of India. Very illuminating piece. The DGCA has asked now Air India to go through a series of checks on all their 787s, 8 and 9 version. This has just been issued, this order. And it seems to be the things that they have to look out for are the ones that have been raised in these depositions. So either DGCA has been allowing Air India a long rope, knowing fully well there are issues, and only now woken up to it, which is very problematic. We won't discuss that with you right now, but I just want you to tell me, what do you think went wrong here? We are seeing those visuals. Let's put those visuals, let's keep the focus on the visuals of the crash and that plane that is taking off. But I want to ask you, Mr. Singh, what in your estimation has actually gone wrong?
Well, from the videos, if you see, as the aircraft lifts off, there's a plume of dust, which is the vortex which is created by the wings that is lifts off, indicating that the lift is being generated. But it also points out that the aircraft has reached the end of the runway, the end of the runway. It should have got airborne well ahead. So why did the aircraft reach that far is probably because there was some loss of thrust initially. So there's a speed called decision speed. If any failure happens before that, the aircraft is supposed to reject. After that, you must continue. The aircraft is certified to fly with one engine. And probably the pilots decided to continue and lift off late. The rotation was fine, but the landing gear was left down, as you also said. This normally happens when there is a distraction. So normally when the aircraft lifts off within 5 seconds, the pilot who is flying orders gear up, and the pilot not flying puts the lever up. But if there's a distraction, you're distracted. There's a tendency, we have seen it a number of times in training, that people tend to forget it down because they are concentrating on some engine parameter or something which has distracted their or attracted their attention. So similar thing must have happened here. Aircraft got airborne at some altitude, maybe 400, 500 feet. Then the aircraft starts mushing, gliding down. It has not come crashing down, which means there is some power being generated, but the speed is decreasing gradually. And as the nose goes up, means the pilot is in a desperate position trying to avoid the building or try to keep the aircraft afloat as much as possible. But the trajectory, the wings are, the airspeed is dropping, so is the lift decreasing. So the trajectory will go down, but the nose will keep on rising. So that is what we see from here. And if I add the checks which have been added in the letter recently, just issued letter by DGCA, those are very specific checks, which could indicate that there is something which they have the knowledge of, which happened just before the flight, when it came from Delhi to Ahmedabad, or when the aircraft departed. So they are in the know of something. That is why there are certain specific checks. Otherwise, how could they be?
This is very worrying, because this almost seems to suggest to me that people are waking up after the problem, after the incident.
Yeah.
I mean, if there were problems and now we have to run checks on all of these, that means there are some red flags. And these were raised last year. So DGCA, I'm sorry to say, central government organization, should have been a little more, perhaps, aware. Number one, maybe not so easily believing in Boeing's explanations. and should have actually been pressuring Air India to do all these things. We've lost people.
So the regulation is that every country has to independently evaluate the aircraft. So our capability is not there. DGCA is not capable of independently evaluating a Boeing or an Airbus. So we depend on a FAA certification or a EASA, which is the European certification. So we say that, okay, since FAA has done it and FAA is complying with ICAO requirements, so we assume that they must be correct. Otherwise, a country like Brazil.
The FAA, actually, to be honest with you, sir, the FAA, through the DOJ, came to a conclusion that a little bit of money from Boeing would satisfy their curiosity. And there were 2 incidents of massive crashes, not involving this, but the MAX plane, and several losses of lives.
The only country which
Boeing
was training,
paid their way out of problems.
The only country which was training on the MCAS was Brazil. Why? Because Brazil has an independent evaluation board and FAA was assisting Brazil. So the only country in the world which was training pilots on MCAS was Brazil, and Boeing did not reveal it to anybody. So that is something which nobody is talking about. Why did Brazil? Because there are aircraft
What about Air India?
manufacturers.
Air India just bought into the Boeing explanation and kept quiet? Is that what we're supposed to believe?
Air India goes as per DGCA. What DGCA says, DGCA is convinced that what FAA says is correct.
So here is the problem, viewers, and I want to bring in Mr. Sivaraman. Thank you very much, Mr. Singh, for putting this into perspective for our viewers. We're shocked, actually. I'm actually shocked. You don't have the capacity. You're trusting some American authority. Dr. Ranganathan, pay attention to what is going on. This is serious. But Mr. Sivaraman, you're a former DGCA. What is the DGCA up to? What is it doing? It's paying 30 lakh. No, it's asking Air India to pay a 30 lakh fine for allowing a pilot to fly without completing mandatory takeoffs and landings. So, 30 lakhs, sir, for maybe at the very least 130 people on board. Do the math, sir.
Okay, let me draw your attention to one fact. Captain Ranganathan is there and Captain Singh, both of them are there.
No, this
First
is Dr.
of all,
Ranganathan. Anyhow.
None of the channels has asked this question of Air India.
Yes. Yes, go ahead.
Whether they have got a facility on ground to monitor the DFRD data which can come online from these aircraft. Because there is ACARS, Aircraft Communication Addressing and Reporting System. Now this facilitates some of the parameters of the engine, etc., to be online with a system available on the ground. There is no need for the DFDR data to be decoded. Even now, if this facility had been installed in the Air India, by this time they would have known what happened to the aircraft or to the engine. Secondly, now as regards the problems relating to the Boeing company itself.
No, I'm not going there. Forget that for the moment. I'm asking you about DGCA. You say, okay, Air India doesn't have, as you have mentioned, facility on ground to monitor DFRD data. This to me is a systemic failure if that is the case. But the DGCA can't get away by saying 30 lakhs, 80 lakh fine, 30 lakh fine for inadequate Cat 3 pilot rostering during fog. A person who can't fly a plane during...
Even if you file...
Yes.
Suppose you find the Tata company 100 crores.
Yeah.
What does it matter? The question is, if the DGCA has noticed several failures on the part of the Tata Airlines and complying with the instructions issued by the DGCA, they should have issued a notice telling them that if they don't comply within 45 days, their operator's license will be withdrawn.
So why didn't it happen, Mr. Sivaraman? That's why I'm asking. Is the DGCA some sort of a compromised organization?
No,
is it hollow morally?
Why it has not, it is reflecting. Why it has not happened, let me tell you. When I took over as DGCA, I was a very reluctant person to occupy that office. The Prime Minister and the Aviation Minister, Mr. Arif Mohammad Khan gave me an assurance that they will not interfere with my discretion at any point of time during my tenure. And they mentioned it in the parliament. And therefore, I had virtual control over the entire civil aviation operations in the country. When I issued an instruction, I considered it, even now it is a law, and they have to comply with it. If they do not comply with it, the DGCA can take very strict action.
But it's
We
not
can
taking
suspend the
action.
operator's
And this is
license
the
of
problem.
company.
Viewers, you and I are forced to choose between
now
two.
the things-
Just two. No, hang on. Where is the choice for us? There are just two airlines, really. There's Air India on one side, there's Indigo on the other.
Yeah.
It's the devil in the deep sea. I'm sorry to say this, but today, if this is exactly the systemic fault, Dr. Ranganathan, we are flying into danger every day. And I will bring in KVJ Rao right after this because he's going to tell you where the real problem is. This is a boys' club. I'm sorry to say so. Everyone is closing ranks. And I'll tell you what's going to come out, Dr. Ranganathan, from that box. They'll say, oh, it's the pilot's error, and that'll be the end of it. What happened after the last crash in Mangaluru? File closed. Dr. Ranganathan.
No, absolutely. Good evening, Rahul, and good evening to my fellow panelists, all of whom are experts. So I speak as a layman out here. I'd like to make 3 or 4 points. Rahul, what you say is absolutely correct. Even one accident, fatal one at that, is one too many. It is unacceptable. Having said that, I just want to put the data on the table. First things first, for many who since yesterday are very anxious, it is reassuring that air travel is the safest mode of travel. In fact, around the world, air travel is about 10 times on average safer than train travel. In India, it is about 20 times safer than train travel. Number one. Number two, this is the first fatal accident of Dreamliner ever since its induction in the last 15 years after flying 30 million flying hours. So that itself should at least be some sort of reassuring. But as I said, even one fatal accident is one too many. Now, what are the actions that our DGCA has taken? Ironically, I think the situation in the last 5 or 6 years has actually improved. Let me give you the data. The inspections and the enforcements of DGCA against the airlines have actually improved by almost 25% year upon year. So now every year the DGCA enforces greater than 500 actions. It has increased its fines, although that is minimum as far as safety is concerned. But here is the thing. There is a 25% increase in the safety surveillance that DGCA conducts on our airlines combined, totaling up to 4,500 to 5,000 safety inspections. And ironically, that has improved our air safety world index from 110 to 48. So while, it is true that one fatal accident is one too many, it is unacceptable. It is also a fact that DGCA possibly is, at least I would say, it's not gone down in terms of, its safety audit or its performance in the last 5 or 6 years. Now let me come to this accident per se. Of course, as I keep on repeating, it is too early, and I as a layman do not want to hazard any speculation. And there are experts on the panel who, and you played a clip where the ex-former pilot talked about the various reasons that there could be. First of all, thank you yesterday, Rahul, for playing that clip that shows that it took exactly 30 seconds from takeoff to the crash. And the problem that is compounding is that the flight data recorder, whatever information it would give, that also would be problematic because of those 30 seconds, there was nothing wrong in the first 20 seconds.
Yeah.
So everything happened in the last 20 seconds, and I don't know how much of information would be gleaned from the flight data recorder.
One can't second guess these things. We don't know, we are not qualified. But there are 2-3 points that I want to make. There are many more planes now. So the DGCA is going to be conducting many more inspections. So things have changed. Number two, you see, you talked about enforcement. It's the quality of the enforcement, KVJ Rao, that matters more. I can be topical. I can say, yes, I've enforced, a certain punitive action, but it could be 10 rupees. It is not deterrence. Deterrence needs to be, the fear of God needs to be instilled in these operators. That's why I'm saying increase fines. Yes, fine. You increased a few fines. But as I said, look at this. Mr. Rao, 30 lakh fine for allowing a pilot to fly without completing mandatory takeoffs and landings? I mean, 30 lakhs.
You know, Rahul, I'd like to speak. The earlier gentleman spoke that as a regulator, to be very honest, the employees of DGCA or officers of DGCA none of them have ever flown an aircraft, none of them have worked on an aircraft, and they bring people on deputation from other airlines, and the officers who come from the other airlines are from the management cadre. So they are pushing for profits, and that is exactly what the other gentleman explained. We are doing a cut copy paste of what the FAA said or the EASA said, but we have never applied our mind. You see, they have a different work culture, we have a very different work culture. So we have to look into all these aspects which are never looked at. That is how I would like to begin with. And let me tell you, DGCA is like a Rip Van Winkle. It will wake up when there's an incident and then it will go back to sleep. And just as you said, like, you know, today we are discussing this accident, but 15 days down the line nobody might want to re-talk about it. But the inactions of the DGCA will continue. I rest assured we would not have learnt any lessons. Like I said, I have been exposing these corruption in the DGCA since 2008. I have paid a very heavy price for it, but I am willing to pay
Mr. Rao,
that
let me
price.
ask you a counter question.
Yes.
It's an important one. You see, politicians in this country speak about giving autonomy to the ED, the CBI, and the EC, but they never talk about giving autonomy to the DGCA. Why is this? I'm getting the sense that there is
Rahul,
something, there are some commercial interests. Look, viewers, I don't want to end up with a suit because today that's the fastest way of shutting down a journalist that is asking a question. But I'm finding this strange. Air India is gambling away its Tata brand equity by indulging in these antics, and I've recited some of them for which they have been pulled up and fined. And on the other side, you have the DGCA that is doing, in my assessment, I might be wrong and I want to be corrected, a perfunctory job. Scary.
No, actually there is nothing. If Air India tomorrow tells DGCA we have done this, they say okay, it has been done. Nobody comes to check. Rahul, that is exactly what I am trying to tell you. A couple of years back, we conducted a mock evacuation drill on a 777-300. Now the crew that were asked to do that mock drill had just landed into Delhi from various flights from all over the world. They were woken up at 6 in the morning, said 9 o'clock you come for the mock drill, evacuation drill. And
shocking.
Rahul, the DGCA nodal officer, Mr. Sonam Lepcha, failed the exam, failed that mock drill. We couldn't evacuate the passengers in the required time, despite which no lessons were learned. And Mr. Sonam Lepcha continued to be the DGCA nodal officer till he retired.
Look, to be fair to him, he's not here to defend his name. So I wouldn't want to get into personal liabilities, so let's not do that. But I think what we are now learning from this panel, from this very informed panel. Yes, very quickly, sir. Yes. You're making a point. Very quickly, 30 seconds, Mr. Rao. Yes.
Yeah. So the thing is, after that also there was no corrective action taken.
Okay, no corrective action. That's the problem. I mean, it's the accountability, the lack of that, and there is also no corrective action, Dr. Ranganathan, and that's the problem.
Lost the sound.
Yeah, Doctor. Doctor, you there? Can you hear me? Okay, you might have lost him. Yes, Mr. Singh, you're raising your hand. Go ahead.
Yeah, Dr. Ranganathan was talking about the safety standards and how it has gone up. But if you read the report, there's one point in the report which says any fatal accidents in the last 5 years. The requirement is 0 and the report says 0, whereas Calicut accident happened. So if you don't report it to the ICAO, then your obviously report will go high.
Final thoughts, Dr. Ranganathan, final thoughts.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, but I think it's preposterous if at all it happened that a major accident like the Calicut was not reported. I find it befuddling, and if that is the case, then the court should intervene. But Rahul, your point is absolutely well taken, that these regulatory authorities, be it for Telephone Authority of India or anything that regulates a private player, has to be constitutional, has to be extra governmental.
Absolutely.
It can't have any government role.
Give them autonomy. Give them autonomy, because this is an interface between life and death, viewers. Remember that. What else counts?
See, I am
Rahul,
really surprised. Excuse me. I am really. Excuse me, please.
Yes.
Let me have one sentence at least.
Yeah, please.
I am absolutely surprised at the way this discussion is going on.
Okay.
Have you seen the Aircraft Act? The Aircraft Act Section 5 clearly gives the entire responsibility to the DGCA. He is autonomous in functioning. If somebody interferes with his functioning, it is the fault of the government. When I was DGCA for 3.5 years, let any pilot say who interfered with my discretion.
Well, sir, I'm
Nobody
sorry, but the
interfered with my
DGCA
discretion.
needs to
Attached
prove
officer
itself.
of the
It might
ministry.
be, but I don't know. Look, who appoints them? I don't know. There is a problem. You had a good equation with the government. They allowed you the elbow room. Maybe others don't. I don't know, sir. If it is down to whims and fancies, it doesn't work that way for me. It has to be institutionalized, viewers. And this is
No, what is
Is it
institution?
as
People are
independent
suggesting?
as CAG?
It's a
Could
statutory
be
authority. It is a constitutional authority.
okay.
Could you please answer one question? Is it as
There
independent?
have been engineers
as the-
DGCA, there have been pilots DGCA,
Okay.
there have been air marshals DGCA.
Okay, so viewers,
there have been all kinds
viewers,
of people
look,
DGCA.
this is not a witch
What
hunt.
is it that
This is
people
not a
want
witch hunt.
in the
Let me say,
panel?
this is not a witch hunt. We are trying as citizens today to understand why we are having these problems. And look, there are many things that have happened which have not turned catastrophic, thankfully. But we may not be where we are. So think about that, viewers. I'm not here trying to pin blame on anybody. We'll end this for now. We're going to await the reports and we're going to come back to this conversation. We're not going to let people move on and forget. But there's been a war, viewers, and I want to turn our attention to that now. Viewers, in part 2, we are focusing on the fact that West Asia may be teetering on the precipice of an all-out war between Israel and Iran. In the early hours of today, viewers, Israel has drawn a new line in the sands of deterrence. Israel has launched Operation Rising Lion to defang Iran, which it accuses of not just exporting terror but also amassing nuclear fuel to produce weapons for the express purpose of carrying out a genocidal nuclear attack against Jews in Israel. Listen to Netanyahu.
Moments ago, Israel launched Operation Rising Lion, a targeted military operation to roll back the Iranian threat to Israel's very survival. This operation will continue for as many days as it takes to remove this threat. For decades, the tyrants of Tehran have brazenly, openly called for Israel's destruction. They've backed up their genocidal rhetoric with a program to develop nuclear weapons. In recent years, Iran has produced enough highly enriched uranium for 9 atom bombs. 9. In recent months, Iran has taken steps that it has never taken before, steps to weaponize this enriched uranium. And if not stopped, Iran could produce a nuclear weapon in a very short time. It could be a year, it could be within a few months, less than a year. This is a clear and present danger to Israel's very survival.
More than 200 Israeli jets were involved in air raids on at least 100 targets subsequently in Iran in 5 waves of strikes, including at the key Natanz nuclear site, as well as at ballistic missile sites to degrade Iran's ability to hit back. About a dozen different sites appear to have been attacked, and on the map, viewers, you can see some of them, including in Tehran, Tabriz, Isfahan, Kermanshah. These are some of the sites, viewers. So you have the Tehran Research Reactor, Tabriz, Kermanshah. You have the Arak Heavy Water Reactor in Isfahan, Nuclear Technology Center in Natanz Enrichment Facility there. Israel also has reportedly killed at least 6 senior Iranian nuclear scientists and a number of senior Iranian officials, including its most senior military officer and the head of the Revolutionary Guards. There are a number of these people who have been eliminated, wiped out. Mohammad Bagheri, as I told you, Iran's Armed Forces Chief of Staff, Major General Hossein Islami, Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Commander, Major General Rashid, Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps official, Muhammad Mahdi Tehranchi, nuclear scientist, Faridun Abbasi, another nuclear scientist. So pretty much anyone who is consequential to this nuclear program and to, of course, the military capacities of Iran have been eliminated. US President Trump struck a triumphant note and warned Iran that there was more to follow if the country didn't come to the table and give up its nuclear weapons program. Iran has announced that it will no longer participate in a dialogue on this issue with the United States. It's pulled out, in fact, but this is what Trump said. Listen in.
There's a chance of massive conflict. We have a lot of American people in this area, and I said, we got to tell them to get out because something could happen soon. And I don't want to be the one that didn't give any warning and missiles are flying into their buildings. It's possible. So I had to do it. I had the choice. Do I do it or not? Doing it has its downside, but it also has its upside. Like, you're going to save a lot of lives if it should happen. Hopefully that doesn't happen. Well, I'd love to avoid the conflict. Iran's going to have to negotiate a little bit tougher, meaning they're going to have to give us some things that they're not willing to give us right now. I'm the last person. I've kept us out of wars.
Well, viewers, Iran has pulled out. It's not going to negotiate. It's pulled out of negotiations. Iran has also vowed catastrophic revenge upon Iran and also threatened other regional players who it is said has abetted in Israel's designs, which has led to both Israel and the United States not only pulling out its diplomats in various embassies, which it thinks is vulnerable to Iranian strikes or counter strikes around the globe, but also, viewers, it has asked for enhanced security in countries where it thinks that some of its assets, diplomatic assets, are under threat. Now, what does all this mean, viewers? Let's put this into perspective, and we have with us some very insightful guests this evening. Let's go straight across to some of them and get a sense of what to make of these developments. I want to first begin with Uzi Arad, former National Security Advisor to Prime Minister Netanyahu from 97 to 99, and the head of the INSC. We also have former Director for Intelligence, Mossad, and Glenn Carl, former CI officer. So Mr. Uzi Arad has held a large number of portfolios, and he will be able to give us a bit of a sense of what Israel has contemplated, it is wanting to achieve, and why it did what it did. So can you explain, Mr. Arad?
Well, you have said it yourself when you listed the steps taken. Iran is in a singular position in which it is a country which explicitly and most authoritatively, through its leaders, declares its ambition to destroy Israel. It's not common that nations threaten others with complete extinction. Iran has been doing that, declaring that, but in addition to that, has been also activating that and has taken action towards that goal. It had already been, for example, privy to the recent attacks on Israel by the Hamas and some of those Islamic extremist organizations which attacked Israel viciously, and Iran was behind those attacks. When that happened, let me remind you, Iran at one point even attacked directly Israel by firing hundreds of ballistic missiles at Israel directly. It is involved in that. But what brought this thing to a head is the fact that Iran has been advancing its nuclear weapons program to the point that it was nearing, in fact, acquiring such weapons. Now, Israel declared throughout that this would constitute an existential threat to its own security, that it could not tolerate the possibility of a country that wants to destroy it to have the means to destroy it, and following warnings again and again, it had to act preemptively.
But Mr.
So
Arad,
this is
there
preemptive
was
strike.
let me just play devil's advocate. I support Israel's right to self-defense. Let's be very clear. But just to get the other side in, metaphorically speaking, I want to ask you, because there was diplomatic engagement going on between the United States and the Iranians. Should we not have let that play out? Perhaps Iran would have seen sense in what the terms that were being offered and might have pulled back instead of resorting to violence, which could lead to more violence and an escalation which will completely destabilize an already destabilized region.
Well, you know, in effect, there were two such dialogues with Iran conducted by international bodies. In the first place, you have the international agency, the IEA, and only recently you have the head of that body placing a very serious accusation at Iran at having proceeded in a clandestine way to enrich more and more, and doing so without complying with certain things that it committed itself to do. This was a serious warning coming from the IEA, and it took place only a few days ago. At the same time, there was this engagement with Americans and Iranians directly. Now, the question was whether the Iranians were really intent on coming to a compromise that would seriously constrain it from producing weapons, as it said it will not produce. But it came to be realized, including by the US, that the Iranians were acting, in fact, were lying and deceiving. And there were steps that they were possibly considering breaking out. That has been made clear by the President of the United States. So, had those negotiations led to actually abandoning its nuclear program, then they would have succeeded, and they were to be the course to prefer. But that is not the case. The case, as we have seen repeatedly, Iran has defiantly and aggressively.
So you're basically saying that critical mass had been achieved by the Iranians. They were about to go fully nuclear. They would have been the second country to have the Islamic bomb, and they have a nihilistic outlook. Okay, that's the
second. What do you mean the second?
Well, Pakistan. Pakistan is the first one,
exactly.
right? So this should be the second. Okay, let's open this up, because Abhijit Iyer Mitra also here with us. He's a senior fellow at the IPCS, an analyst, and he's been tweeting quite a bit today. How has Israel affected so much damage? Let's keep those pictures, and I want our viewers to see those precision strikes. Abhijit Iyer Mitra, this is something that is unprecedented, and apparently all sorts of feints were undertaken to do this. Can you break this down for us?
So, Rahul, the main thing is Israel invests in human beings. This is a human intel-driven and intel-driven operation, which is what Israel always does. They focus completely on people gathering the intel, which is why even the taking out of the IRGC Air Force leadership, they had such in-depth profiles on them. They actually managed to corral them into a command bunker, kept them there, and then hit them. Right. So they're very good at this kind of thing. The F-35s and, F-16s and F-15s, these are just the tip of the iceberg. The real bulk of the iceberg is the kind of effort that Israel puts into gathering intelligence, which is why these strikes are very successful. The second thing is, Israeli operational culture is to keep challenging your commanders and things like that. In India, we won't even dream of the kind of almost casualness in which a junior officer will contradict his senior officer and things like that, which is why they're able to evolve. Now, if you remember in the 2024 ballistic missile strike that Iran carried out on Israel, Israel came to the conclusion, look, you can't do terminal phase intercept, so let's get them even before they are launched. So what you're seeing right now is Iran is completely unable to even launch ballistic missiles, because the moment they're coming out of their storage areas or their hiding areas or whatever, there are actual, apparently this is what the reports are saying, and we've seen videos to this effect, that they are bringing out shorter range drones and things like that, and blowing up these missiles even before they get airborne. So it is even a pre-boost phase intercept in that sense. That said, let's look at, as impressive as these Israeli achievements are, we need to remember that, there is an Indian interest in what Israel is doing up to a point, but not beyond that point. India's interest is that Iran should never become nuclear. The problem is, if it goes into regime change, it becomes counterproductive for us. It may be very good for Iran, but I want you to remember the Shah was very hostile to India. That was not a good regime for India. They armed and aided Pakistan in several wars against India. So, a contained Iran still under the Ayatollahs is probably, let's put it this way. We have an interest in the Shia-Sunni schism continuing, as long as we needed to.
Okay. Well, that's a slightly tangential view, and I'm not bringing India into this just as of now, but I want to bring in Glenn Carl, former CIA officer. Glenn Carl, I have to ask you this question. Can the West get to exercise a veto on who gets to go nuclear, point one? And point two, I find it fascinating. Trump supports Israel's right to avenge alleged Iranian terror export, but doesn't apply the same principle to India. Why? I'm interested in the second question, actually.
Well, let's start with the second first, but I'd like to say it's a pleasure to be on the air with Uzi, whom I've not seen for a number of years, and would be happy to see again. I don't know that it's a double standard, actually. The issue for India and Pakistan from the U.S. perspective is that you have two nuclear powers, one of which is already a global superpower, really, or on the cusp of being one, and the other of which is a nearly dysfunctional state. So the consequences of an escalation between Pakistan and India are global and almost existential. That's not the case for Israel and Iran. The issue is existential for Israel, which is certainly a significant point to weigh, but it's not a global existential threat. So I don't think it's a double standard. I think that
aren't you making
equations
too fine a point,
different.
Glenn Carl? Because let's be honest, you talk about the India-Pakistan contest in apocalyptical terms. So does Trump when it comes to Iran acquiring nuclear weapons. You said that Pakistan is a failing state or a failed state or an whatever state. Surely it's in Trump's interest to negotiate to get those nuclear weapons out of Pakistan.
Well, that train has left the station long ago. The train is just about being built, or its steam has built up to the point where it can leave the station with Iran. So they really are not, I think, double standards. The issues are different. The equation for Iran is simple but excruciating. Israel has phenomenally, if not destroyed, incapacitated for a period of time, the surrogates that Iran has built up over the decades and has used to project its power. So that all that has left for Iran is a largely ineffective conventional military to use against Israel, or the option of going nuclear, the theory being that is the inoculation against regime change. That might not be the case, actually. And Iran has a simpler option, which would be not to develop nuclear weapons. But that seems to be tied in, from the Iranian perspective, with regime survival. Okay. So they put themselves into a terrible box.
Terrible box. Mr. Chileni, let me come to you, because it appears, and look, there are similarities, and we're going to keep those punishing pictures of those strikes on air because they are more interesting than seeing the Ayatollah. That much I can tell you. But Mr. Chileni, I have to ask you this question because it's an important one. We've seen certain strikes undertaken by India just about a month back, a little over a month ago, Israel seems to have, I won't say borrowed, but been inspired from India's deterrence manual, if you like. Obviously, they've gone further because they're not up against a nuclear state, but there are striking parallels here, aren't there?
Striking parallels, but also contrasting approaches. India gave Pakistan 15 days notice that was going to strike targets within Pakistan. Israel's attacks on Iran caught Iran by surprise. More importantly, Iran followed the first principle of air warfare, which is that before you try to assassinate any individual, the leadership, whether it's of the military or other specialized agencies, or you carry out deep penetration strikes, your first approach, your opening salvos, should focus on taking out the enemy's air defenses and ballistic missile launchers. That's the reason why, in response, Iran has not been able to fire ballistic missiles at Israel because its launchers were targeted in the first airstrikes by Israel. So Israel followed what air warfare strategy demands. That's the very first principle. And that very principle India ignored because India's political leadership gave direction to the armed forces to strike only terrorist camps in Pakistan. Only when that initial objective led to the loss of some Indian warplanes did the Indian political leadership authorize the Air Force to take out Pakistani air defenses and hit air bases. So, in fact, Israel is following the classical air warfare strategy, and I wish India had actually done the same. But to the larger question of Iran becoming a nuclear weapon state, first, US intelligence, according to what's appearing in American media, US intelligence does not believe that Iran was close to acquiring nuclear weapons capability. But then there is the Gaddafi example, which is the reason why Iran has hesitated to do what President Trump is demanding, give up its uranium enrichment program in full. Gaddafi gave up his nuclear weapons option, and we know what happened to him. He was murdered. There was a NATO intervention that resulted in regime change, and that serves as a sobering lesson to the Iranian leadership. So while it is true that for regional security, no nation, whether it's India or Israel, wants another nuclear weapon state to emerge, the fact is that the Gaddafi example set a bad precedent, and Iran is determined, at whatever the cost be, determined to hold on to its uranium enrichment
So
option.
therefore, we are now looking at the frightful prospect of an escalation, because Iran certainly is not going to take a step back. It's been battled and bruised too badly. It's lost face, doesn't have much to hide by the way of face, and it's going to dig its heels in. Viewers, this is going to be a bit of a problem in our neighborhood, immediate neighborhood. I'll leave it at this. Thank you for watching.
Why is it that the flight AI 171 crashed in less than 60 seconds? There are several theories doing the rounds, so let's quickly take you one by one through the same, and then we'll bring in our experts to decode it for you further. The first big theory, as is being speculated, is whether or not this was a result of a bird hit. In rare cases, bird hit may impact both the engines, so that's one big speculation. The second theory, which is being spoken of widely, is double engine glitch. Both engines losing power simultaneously, leading to this kind of a plane crash, though aviation experts have pointed out very clearly that this is a rarity. Yet, it's not been ruled out completely. The third theory is that of fuel contamination. Fuel contamination could lead to fuel clogging, which could then result in engine failure. And the fourth theory, which is being spoken of widely, overloading. The crew has to correctly estimate total load of the plane. The total load of the plane is a combination of the fuel load, the passenger load and baggage load. Though this is a protocol, it's largely followed. So this is also something which is still in the realm of speculation. The load factor, though, is critical in summertime when air is thin. To decode this, to put this in perspective, DBS Gujral, former DG Flight Safety Air Costa, is with us in the studio. Mr. Gujral, appreciate you taking out your time. Thank you for speaking to us here on CNN News 18. There are so many questions, Mr. Gujral, that Indians today are asking to the civil aviation industry, DGCA, pointed questions on how this could have happened. Because to our minds, this is unheard of. A plane takes off. Within 30 to 60 seconds, it crashes into another building and the plane could not lift off. We've spoken of four factors, sir. First up, what's your assessment?
Let me start with this, that an accident of this kind where an aircraft is taking off and crashes within seconds is one of the most rare, perhaps first of its kind in the world. And most of the accidents, you would have noticed, they occur during the landing phase, right? Or sometimes we had mid-air collisions where the passengers died, the aircraft were destroyed. And in this particular case, as you have pointed out, there are 3-4 theories coming forward. It's sometimes very difficult to believe that a thing of this kind can happen, that the aircraft is perfectly fine, it is inspected, all checks are carried out during the transit. This aircraft flew from Delhi to Ahmedabad, and all transit checks as per the regulatory requirements were carried out, and then it was released for the flight from Ahmedabad to London. But surprisingly, up to the time of takeoff, there was absolutely no indication of any engine glitch or loss of power. The moment he rotated, rotation means the moment he started his takeoff, the problem started, wherein the pilot says that he is losing power, he is not able to lift, and as a last resort, he makes a mayday call to the air traffic control, and that was the last. And he has also recorded a message that he cannot lift, there is no power in the engines. Now, this is one very, I think, first case of its kind where both the engines have simultaneously failed. Now,
but are we certain about that, sir? The situation you're telling us would have been better than it was yesterday if one of the engines was working, or if this was not case of a dual engine failure?
If one of engine is working, at least you have got the lift. The aircraft is designed in such a way that in the event of a failure of one engine, if he is in the cruise, he can continue the flight. There have been a similar incident in the past where an aircraft was coming from Hong Kong, and 2 hours away from Delhi, the pilot noticed that the right hand fuel tank was leaking, and he didn't have enough fuel to make it to Delhi. So after making all calculations, he shut down the right hand engine and he made a single engine landing at Calcutta. So what I mean to say is that if one engine is working, there is a risk, but it's minimized.
But we can't say for sure what could have been the reason for the engine.
Hello, Namaskar. This is First Post and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. West Asia is on the brink of an all-out war. Israel has launched dozens of airstrikes on Iran, that too on their nuclear sites. This is an unprecedented operation by the Israelis, one that pushes West Asia to the edge of war. In fact, Iran is already calling it a declaration of war. Tonight, we'll tell you how this operation unfolded and how Iran is responding. They've launched around 100 drones towards Israel today. We'll also discuss America's position. The US is distancing itself from the attack, but Trump is not abandoning Israel despite Netanyahu's apparent defiance. And where does Iran's nuclear program stand today? How close is Tehran to building a bomb? Also, why did Netanyahu order this attack now? Was it for Israel's security or for his own survival? We'll also revisit the tragedy in Gujarat where an Air India plane crashed